All right, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Solberg, one of your hosts. You can find me at TrueCrime on YouTube, and I have Dallas here.
Hi everyone, I'm Dallas. I was glad to be back on Friday night. We are here again from the panel.
I love it. It's been a while, right, Dal?
It has been, what, since May 2 was our last one?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
I know, and I said we're going to be all consistent, and then I went inconsistent on everybody. So I did post a video last week that did pretty well, though. Yeah. Now, I did record that video a while ago. I recorded it back in April. And it was kind of funny because I did all the Trudeau apologies over the years. Now, there's going to be more. But it didn't do too bad, so that was good. But that kind of leads us into what we're going to be talking about today. So what are we going to be talking about today, Dal?
So we're going to talk about gun control in states and why you guys, it seems,
Yep.
just outside of looking in, being Canada.
Yeah, and
It's kind of a necessary thing that needs to be addressed for sure.
Yep. And then we're going to talk about Canada's gun laws as well. So it's interesting. So what I'm going to do, I think what we do on this one, because I don't want to say I'm an expert, but, I will start off with, I have shot my fair share of guns in Canada and in the U.S. Difference being is in Canada, they're always long rifles, like hunting rifles, like 303, 30-06, 7mm, that kind of stuff. Here, I got the luxury of shooting a lot of handguns and AR-15s and things like that you hear on the news all the time. I had a really good friend, or have a really good friend, that has a pretty big gun collection. And I'll tell you, we used to go to the gun range during lunch when we're at work. And there was a place where it was like a restaurant and a gun range. So you could eat and then go shoot. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But a lot of good stuff. So I'm going to turn it back to you so you can ask your questions. And then I'll ask you some on Canada. And then I'll kind of give you some perspective. So, yeah, so short answer is yes, because we do have the right to bear arms. But different states have different laws, and you could require different licenses to use guns. So, for example, I live right on the border of Illinois. I live in the Iowa side. On the Iowa side, I don't have to have any permits. I can conceal and carry if I want. There is a stand your ground law. There's no duty to retreat. So if somebody came to my door and they were going to do me harm, I could shoot them. Obviously, you'd still go through court, and there's a lot of nuances to that. Whereas across the river, which is only 15 minutes away, not even, but we'll say 15 minutes, I have to have what's called a FOIP card, which I do have. I would show it on here, but it has too much personal information. But that FOIP card's good for, I can't remember how many states, like 5 or 7 states. So I had to apply for that. Now, it wasn't hard to get. They basically, I submitted an application and I was able to get that card really fast. Now, other states do have to have a concealed and carry permit. So you have to go through a class, you get your conceal and carry, which means that you can conceal your weapon on you at any time. You could have it in the glove compartment. And there's different rules in different states, like some that can't be loaded, or you've got to put your ammo in the trunk, and they've got to be separated, that kind of stuff. So as you get into state by state, they have different laws. Then you have states like Texas and Oklahoma that have open carry, which you don't see very often. Like I was in Oklahoma, I never saw anybody open carry other than police officers. So you could have your So that just means you could have like your gun on your waist and it could be out in the open. And then there's rules there too, like you can't have weapons, say like on school grounds and churches and like government property. And every state has a lot of different ones. So I'm not an expert by any means. Like you would have to go state by state. But yes, you can own a gun in every state one way or another. And it is actually pretty easy to get one as long as you've never committed a felony. There's some other requirements, but it's pretty easy to get your guns here.
Really?
Yep.
I know, like, well, I looked at the gun application once, and I just to see what it was, but it seemed like it was a little more in depth. Like when people go in the States on like, obviously, you want to open up a bank account, you get free guns, or you get a free rifle. Like, is that really happening down there? Like, are you serious?
So let's back that up, because that's a Michael Moore documentary where he does actually go in, and I don't know where he was at. I don't remember if it was in Michigan, and I don't want to say that doesn't happen. I haven't personally went into a bank and saw that they were giving a gun away for opening an account. Usually it's like some sort of cash or cash back, right? But I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because we saw it on that documentary. I think that was back in, I think it was Bowling for Columbine. I think it was like 99 or 2000, right? Or maybe even 2001. So I'm sure that did happen. And I'm sure there are places that you can have that happen. I will say it is pretty easy to get access to a gun. And a lot of people have them. I've always felt comfortable around them. I grew up, so in Canada, right, northern British Columbia, I was taught gun safety at a very young age. So once I learned how much respect you had to have for a gun, I think that was key. How to manage a gun, how to carry a gun, loaded versus unloaded. Treat every gun as it's loaded all the time. Even if you've fully unloaded that gun, you've cleaned it, you put it back together, you still treat it as if it's loaded, right? Because you never know. That's when accidents happen. You get complacent. So yeah, interesting question.
Yeah, it's I find it because obviously you hear the news, like how easy it is. Okay, say for instance, let's go to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That mass shooting that happened in the I saw the documentary on it, where I can't remember his name, but obviously he was known because he was always there. It was very easy for him to get all of those guns up there. Like, is there a limit that you guys like? Are you allowed a limited guns in your team?
No, there's not a limit. Yeah, you can get whatever. Um, yeah, so like a gun enthusiast, for example, like my friend Brandon that lives in Virginia, we lived in Oklahoma City together. He had everything you can imagine, gun safes. He would order parts and put them together, and but again, I always felt safe around him because he practiced gun safety all the time. Right? Like there was never any craziness happening. There was never any, let's pull the guns out and look at them and point them. And like literally they were on display, and then he would move them from his safe to a gun case, put them in his car. When we would go shooting for lunch, he'd pull them out, still in the case, bring them onto the range, put them on the range table, put them together, put them back after we were done. So we didn't just have guns laying out. Yeah, ammo was always separated for him, even when it didn't have to be. Like, he just practiced really good gun safety, so you always felt safe. And he'd be the first to tell you, like, these things can be dangerous in the wrong hands, right? So it is pretty easy. Like, I can go, if I wanted to go buy a gun tomorrow, I could. Now, sometimes if you don't have any license, like I have my FOIP card, so it's pretty easy. Because I'm already pre-licensed basically, but a lot of places where you go buy guns, they're going to have a 24 to 72 hour hold. Different in different states, but and then basically they're doing a background check at that point, right? I've got clearance because of the military base too, so that helps out because they just did a background check on me, so that expedites it a little bit quicker. But outside of that, it's not that hard.
I've never tried. Not that I would want to try. I think I held a handgun once. Like, oh, it was a 9 mil. It was like
Ah.
10. I was like, I need this gun. Like, obviously I didn't remember what it was. I think it felt so heavy. Like, it didn't feel like the movies, It didn't feel easy or
Wow.
it felt really awkward. But anyways, with everyone in the States, like you said, is obviously
Okay.
and they got big after. When did they get big after Columbine?
Yeah, I
I
think.
guess it kind of got more notice.
Yeah, I think like obviously Charleston. What is it? Was it Charles Heston? I think that's how you say his name. The old actor. I think they were a lot bigger before that, but that's when you started hearing them more. But the NRA has been around for a long time.
Right.
So, yeah.
So if you guys were going to put gun control on, like, how would that look like? Say you were like outsider looking in, or you had a voice on how to make it safer, because it seems like every time you turn on the news, there's either a mass shooting at a school, there's a mass shooting at a bar. Um, you can't even drive down the road rage. Like, you can't confront anybody because you don't know if you're going to get, killed that day. Um, you can't like those what was it, last year or the year before, where there was all those shootings down in the states, like say for instance those girls who pulled in the wrong driveway
Yep.
and were shot
Yep.
and then pulled out, or that kid who went to the wrong house,
Yep.
knocked on the door, picked up his sister, shot, like,
Yep.
just irresponsible. Like, is it just too, let's say, chaotic in the states where people should not have guns?
So I think I'm going to answer that with a question. Then I'll answer the question fully after. So, from your perspective, because you've never lived in the States, right?
No.
I've been here 23 years, so I'll answer that in just a minute. What do you see on the news? Do you ever see anything good with guns, or how often are you seeing, like you said, school shootings, murders? You were very vivid in, I remember the girl that got shot that pulled into the wrong driveway. A few, and I know which young man you're talking about that got shot going to the wrong door. Yep. There's all sorts of stories like that, and we're not going to discount those because I'll kind of explain those in a minute. But do you ever see anything else outside of that, or is news mostly in Canada saying that the U.S. is a dangerous place?
Oh, it's the news, 100%.
Yeah.
It's stacked up, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, what we see now in Canada is our news is very censored because of our government. We see what we have to see. We're not seeing the big picture. But it is kind of concerning where, you know, it is always on the news. There is something always happening. But at the same time, it's starting to happen in Canada. Like, police officers not handling themselves properly, or is it just, you have something on you and it's just easy? Like, is it, because you can't come back from it.
Nope.
You can't come back from once you pull that trigger. You can't come back from that.
So
I don't know. Like,
let me ask you this: on Canadian news, how often do you hear gun crimes in Canada? Like, if you put it in a perspective of a week, none. Maybe in a month. How often do you guys hear it?
no, our news is very much, I actually had this conversation with a teacher at work. It's very unfortunate. So this summer there's been 6 Indigenous men and 1 woman who have been shot by the police.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like not focused on. It's almost like, okay, well, like, put a blurb out there, but then let's like turn the page on to someone else, right?
Yep.
So, and it seems to be, obviously we want to have a lot of things in our news right now.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. But yeah, with our government, we only get to see so much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. You're okay. So I had this question when I went to, because I was just in the shoe swap a couple weeks ago for a wedding, and we were just sitting around talking, and one of the girls that I met there, Erica, she was from Texas as well, so we were kind of both listening in, and that question came up a lot, like, what does gun control look like in the U.S., and is it really dangerous? And you described a lot of incidents that have happened, even recently. Yeah, school shootings happen pretty frequently, far too often than they should. It should never happen. Instances like people getting shot, going to the wrong driveway. I will say that most of those that happen are derived from hate, like hate crimes, whether it's racially motivated, whether it is religiously motivated or politically motivated, which is three hot topics in the U.S. anyways. And there's usually a underlying factor of one of those three things. You know what I mean? Are you having fun? Are you going to answer the question for us? How old are you? So what I will say is I've lived here for 23 years, right? And I've lived all over the place. I spent a little bit of time in California. I spent some time in Chicago. I don't live too far from Chicago now. I spent time in Minneapolis. I've spent time in Oklahoma City. I've been in situations where, we had heavy gang activity, especially in Oklahoma City. One of our stores, like we'd get MS-13 that would come in all the time. Big tattoos on their necks. Not once did we ever have problems with them. Not once. To be quite honest, it was the opposite. When people would come in, very respectful, like they're human beings as well, right? So you hear a lot about this gang war, turf, stuff like that. Not saying that bad stuff doesn't happen, but in 23 years living in all these areas, I've been to nightclubs, I've been to 23 years of life, right? I've never had somebody pull a gun on me or threaten me with a gun, ever, being in the United States. I don't just sit at home all the time either. I get out and I find stuff to do, right? I like meeting new people. I like, I've never been in an area in the U.S. where I've been scared, right? And I've been to some quote unquote rough areas. What I find is that 99.9% of people are actually really respectful if you're respectful of them, right? But you do have people that just hate people, and there's that. The other thing that I think is that a lot of times we put a lot of focus on the people, the bad people that give guns, and the U.S. as a whole, a bad rap of how hard it is to live here. I've never felt unsafe. And we've been in situations where we've seen bar fights and stuff like that. Again, I've never seen a gun being pulled. I've had friends that carry, right? I would carry myself, but because I have one kid still, I don't have guns in the house. But as soon as he's gone, because I'm responsible for me, I don't want to be responsible for other folks. So I think to answer your question fully, you had said, how would you change gun laws? I don't know if gun laws themselves need to be changed, because if we look at the Second Amendment, right, it's the right to bear arms. And I'm going to pull it up just so we can say word for word, right? So if we go through, it's protects the right of Americans to bear arms, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so I truly do believe that your government shouldn't have better arms than you, but that's always going to happen because they have tanks and they have planes, but they're not going to come to your house and just take stuff, right? At the same time, I think that we're taking the right steps in the right direction. If we look at the Crumbleys, for example, from Michigan, when Ethan Crumbly shot up his school, I think 4 people died. He got in trouble, which he should, but his parents also now are serving punishment. I think it was 10 years each. I think it was manslaughter. You'd have to fact check me on that. But now we're holding parents accountable. And we saw that in Georgia as well, where the kid goes in, and I can't remember his name, shoots up a school, and now his dad, because the sheriff was there the year before. So now parents are being held responsible because, one, if you're a parent, you own a gun, you shouldn't have let your kids have access to that. Now, that's just one component, because a lot of these other shooters, like Nicholas Cruz, was old enough to buy a gun on his own. So, how do we let that happen and not infringe on rights? It's a tough question to answer. Taking guns away now, though, I don't think is going to be the right answer, because it's just, you're never going to get them off the street. And it really does come down to the people that are responsible with them are the people that are going to get hurt, not by other people, but they're going to get their stuff taken away, and the people that want to hurt people are going to have access to them anyways.
Yeah.
So,
I just find it like very. But mind you, I've never tried, so I can't really say if it's easier in Canada. But I just feel like it's easy in the States. Like I wouldn't even know where. Like obviously, what is it called here? Cabalas
yeah,
here. That's like the only place I know where you could. I'm sure there's other places, but I'm like that's the only place I know.
yeah.
But in the States, it's like Walmart.
Yeah, and it really is. Like, I mean, you can get them anywhere. It's not as prevalent as what you hear on the news. Like, when I was there, I was watching, I can't remember if it was CBC or CTV. And I was like, if I watch this crap, I would never want to visit the States. Like, I'd be scared to visit the States. And I don't feel unsafe. Now, does something need to happen? Yeah. I think what happens in the States is we make it far too political. So what happens is you divide people with that. So if you believe in guns, then you're Republican. If you don't believe in guns, you're a Democrat. And I think that's the wrong approach, because what happens is that this has become very political in where you should stand on things. Really, what we should be doing is being very bipartisan, trying to figure out like how can we minimize the dangerous people getting guns in their hands without infringing on their rights. And that's a tough thing to do. But, would stricter backgrounds help? Maybe even implement like a psychology test before you're allowed to buy a gun. I don't know what that would look like. And obviously, I think governments are inflated already and kind of drop the ball on stuff. But there's got to be something. There's got to be change. But I don't agree with taking everybody's guns away, because it'll never work. I think that there's got to be something that's in place, because school shootings shouldn't happen. Shootings in general shouldn't happen. But there's a lot of responsible gun owners out there that don't do that stuff, right?
Right? Yeah, the schools are it's just kind of mind blowing how obviously I'm not in that person's mind. I don't know what they're going through. Um, that almost should be like a no-go zone, like school just harm kids, I guess. But I don't know. They should do something. It feels like that should be a safe place. Like I don't know if there's something that you can do or what the government thinks about it, or if it's just like that's political. Um, I guess it's just a topic that will always be talked about, but not very much.
I
I guess as long as you talk about
yeah.
it, it feels like you're going to do something about it. But
Well, we make it very political when it happens, and I'm not saying laws shouldn't change. I just think that there's just too much blue versus red, left versus right when it comes up. Right? You're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. It's like two little kids fighting, but nothing ever gets solved. The other thing that I look at is that if we wanted this law to change, we needed to change it 100 years ago, right? Because guns are so far sophisticated now. Yeah, would it be nice to live in a world where we didn't need weapons at all? Absolutely. Unfortunately, there's bad people out there. The problem is that I would say 90% of people are good or have good intentions, right? Not to say that somebody doesn't make a mistake. We're all human. We make mistakes. But most people don't go out, wake up in the morning with the intent of killing. There's a small minority group that does that, right? And it could be for any reason. It could be that they hate the world. It could be copycat. It could be whatever it is. They're the 10% minority that want to do it, right? But I will say, like Columbine, because you brought up Columbine in '99, really started this trend. But you got to remember, it happened in Canada right after too, in Tabor, and that's where Jason Lang died from that, right? So, it's not like it was years after that it happened in Canada, but now you have a lot of these copycats, and yeah. Well, and then you got to remember, like back, it was at the '80s when in Montreal it happened at the girls' school. I'm trying to remember what all girls' school it was. It was like the '80s that happened. It just, the media wasn't as big back then. We didn't have social media. We didn't in '99 either, but it was a different generation. So it's not like it's something new. And I'm open to new ideas. Like how do we do it? How do we and I'm also open to, if more rigorous background checks need to be done, I'll do that. If we need to have a psychology test before getting a gun, I'm into that. Like any extra layers I think is good. But again, you got to look at like what does the rights look like. But I also think the Constitution in the U.S. was written in a sense of, we can implement change and like move forward with the times, right? So I think that there's some of that flexibility, but you got to have two political parties that are willing to talk to each other. And there's such a big divide politically in the U.S. that now the people are so divided that they can't even sit and have a conversation if they're on the other side of the aisle. I talk to a lot of people and I'll challenge what their thoughts are. I don't care if they're red or blue. And by the end of the conversation, they're like, oh, so obviously if they're blue, you're red. And obviously if they're red, you're blue, right? Because I'm just asking questions, right?
Well, do you think that like anything would ever change? Like, say for instance, two attempted assassinations there, like in less than 30 days.
It's hard to say because it is. A lot of people on the left don't believe that happened. They believe it was a setup for, like Trump set that up himself. Now, keep in mind, that's not politically driven. That's just what we see on the news and social media. If it was the other way around, it was Biden, you'd hear probably a lot of people that are on the right side say the same thing. Like, hey, this was all staged for the election. I don't talk a lot about politics, especially in the U.S. Nobody knows where I stand in politics. They think they do. They always do. They're like, like, again, if they're on the opposite side, they always say, like, okay, if they're a Democrat, you're a Republican. If you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, right? That's what they always say, because I always challenge. So if they say X, I want to know why, right? And I think that since 2016, you could go all the way back to like 2000 when I still lived in Canada and the whole hanging Chad thing with Al Gore and all that stuff, stolen elections, right? So it really started way back in 2000, but you could even go all the way back to Nixon with the Watergate scandal, right? So it's been a dirty game from a political standpoint for years and years and years. Well, and if you look at like 2016, according to Hillary Clinton, the election was stolen by Russia, right? Okay. So she's a Democrat through and through. Okay. So crazy talk, I don't know, right? Depends on what side. Do you believe that Russia stole it or not? Whatever. I don't lose sleep over it because I'm like, I don't know, right? 2020, 2020, Donald Trump says he lost the election because the election was stolen, right? So if you go back and forth and you listen to what each side says when they lose, you just have again, it's a minority number, right? Like not every Republican runs around saying, hey, the election was stolen. There's a small number that has a loud voice. Same thing with in 2016. Not every Democrat ran around was like, the election was stolen, right? And there's a lot of arguments to be made in that, like with the collegiate votes and all that stuff, right? So the way politics works, there is a lot of arguments to be made. But what happens, what I found, and I was told this back in 2003 when I moved here, 3 things you don't talk about in the U.S. race, politics, and religion. And I've stuck to that, right? So when I talk politics, I don't talk about what my beliefs are. I just ask questions because people will tell me all sorts of craziness, right? And some of it's true, some of it is crazy. But my true belief is that one, if you look at Canada or look at the US, the government is far too inflated. 2, government spends way too much money, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's Canada or the US. And I've been really focused on Canadian politics because there's so much US politics going on right now that I just tune it out because I don't care where people... I'm a free thinker. I will vote who I think I will vote for. I'm not affiliated or aligned with a party. I will make the decision based off what I'm seeing, based off what I need in my 4 walls, things like that. I don't sign up for blue or red, left or right, right? I don't align with one specific item and say this is what I'm going to do. I literally will let it ride out till the very end and be like, okay, this is going to make the most sense, right? So like true middle voter. And then I support whoever wins. No, I have not. No, I have not. But I have supported every president that's been in, right? And so here's my belief on that is that whether or not I vote for a president, right? And I've been here since Bush. I've always supported that, like not support in a way like I align with their views. I still have different views than every president that's been in. I don't think presidents have as much control as people think because you have the House and the Senate and they really make a lot of stuff happen. Now they have veto power and all that kind of craziness, and that could be a whole nother conversation. But what I do is I'm like, if the people voted them in, then I'm going to respect that. Even if I didn't vote for them, then I'm like, the people have been heard. If there is some fraud, we need to figure that out. But at the end of the day, that's up to the government to work that out, and that's up to law. That's not up to me as a citizen to figure that out. And I think it's just a lot of noise from both political parties that are sore losers, right? Canada is a little bit different because you have so many different parties, and a minority government can hold government, and then you have Trudeau in there for 9 years. And again, it's not a liberal conservative thing. It really is. I just don't like that guy.
It's like it's brutal. You know what? It had nothing to do with like what party or like you said. I generally like cannot stand his voice or seeing him on TV. Like it's just something about him is just cringe to me, and it's not that. And plus, you're just a crappy human.
Yes.
Like you're just a crappy, crappy person, and you have no idea what you're doing, or you do know like you're that calculated that you're literally destroying like a whole country.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. Like this guy, like it's so oblivious to how many people is like him that he still tries to say like
From the outside looking in, it's not even that for me because I don't live what you guys live through. I will say, being back in Canada, I'm like, I'll never move back here because it's just super expensive. Like, people don't realize that. I think the U.S. is realizing that now because usually in election years, I hear a lot about how great Canada is and their health system and all that stuff. And I'm like, you didn't live there clearly. And people will try to convince me of that. And I'm like, well, I lived there for 20 years. Like, I was born and raised there. I think you're listening to other people. So it's not even politically driven for me. It was like, if you watch that video that I made, it's literally all the stuff that he does personally, you know, like the blackface, the Wee scandal, SNC Lavalin, what is it, Jody Ray Wilbon. Now they've got that tech slush fund that what is it, the green tech slush fund that they're going after. Like all of these things, and then it's all him apologizing personally, but he's always tied to it. It's not the party, it's him. Like, he's tied to it personally, like the Wee scandal. He was friends with those boys, not the Liberal Party. That's why I say it's not political for me. It's him, as a prime minister, is corrupt. And people don't see it. They don't see it. And I'm like, okay, so if I screwed people out of that much money, I'd go to jail for life. If I was wearing blackface and I was insensitive, I'd be canceled, right?
I know, right? It's like bizarre. It is absolutely bizarre that he gets away with it. I'm like blown away by it. Yeah, he is. I can't. I like. Oh, we can't have an election fast enough.
Oh, I know.
That's the thing. Like, you can't vote for anybody because they're all equally horrible. They all want how are you gonna fix stuff? Because we're like so in the rears right now. We have way too many people. Way too many people. We can't sustain it. We can't support it. Um, there's so much homeless, like where I'm at. So much homeless now, and people. You know what's unfortunate though is that rent is so high, and people are on say government assistance. They're not raising any of that.
Yeah.
I had a lady come into our office. She was 70 years old, looking for a job, having to go back to school. She was like, I have to go back to school. I'm like, you're 70. What are you doing? Like, could you imagine?
No, I think it's fair. I think even take all of that away. Same with the U.S. Like Canada, if you look over the last 10 years, I was watching a video the other day, just looking at home prices go up, and let's say you spent $400,000 10 years ago, your house is 1.2 million dollars today. To put that in perspective, is we price out a generation. And I was watching a CBC special that was talking about, like, if you were a millennial and you were a late graduator, like 97 to 99, there was a 3% chance you owned a home. But if you were, 92 to 95, there was a 33% chance that you owned a home. That was the difference in those years. I think a lot contributes to that. We're seeing a lot of inflation right now, but it's not even close to what, like, how much are you paying for a liter of gas right now?
We are at 165.
Okay, so that's not bad. So that's $6 a gallon for the folks that are in the U.S., by the way. That's $6 a gallon. So we are paying, so my pump in Iowa right now is like $2.89 a gallon. That's high. That's high. I mean, 4 years ago, it was like $2 a gallon. It was 50 cents a liter, right? When I first moved here, it was just over $1 a gallon. It was crazy. It was like $1.50. Okay. What about? It's weighted. So I think my apples, I just got what is it, the Honeycrisp apples, and they were like $2.99 a pound. Holy shnikes. What about a watermelon? I just bought a big watermelon for $6.99.
They're almost $17 for the summer. They're like expensive.
That is crazy. I thought $6.99 was expensive. What about like a bottle of soda?
Oh, we're at $2 plus.
Okay, so that's not bad. We're about there right now. We're like $2.89. We do get 100 extra milliliters than what you get. We get the 20 ounce, and you guys are 500. Yeah. What about? I'm trying to think, just to put it in perspective. I saw T-bone steaks there, which were absolutely crazy. Yeah, you don't buy steaks there, right?
Oh,
No,
it's too expensive. The meat is way too expensive. You're looking at like $55.
that's insane.
And you get a pack of 4, yeah, they're like $25.
I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff that we had purchased that. But yeah, I mean, your health care doesn't cost you anything, so that's good, right?
Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Fortnite for the past hour.
Ah,
How do you add these Fortnite?
I don't play Fortnite. I play Apex. I'll teach you how to play that when you're all grown up.
Yeah. Oh,
Fair enough. But what else? Like, so groceries, they got expensive here. But when I first moved here in 2003, yeah, it's 23 years. You could get a 2 cheeseburger combo for $2.49, and it was like $10 there when I left. So I would imagine, like, how much would that be there now?
oh, you're looking at these $12.
Yeah, and
$13.
yeah.
Nothing really that is cheap. Like I took Noah, Sophie, and Brooklyn to McDonald's. So they got each a 10-piece, like Noah and Brooklyn got a 10-piece chicken meal and a Happy Meal. I was almost at $50.
Yeah,
Like,
that's insane.
but McDonald's will work.
It's getting more expensive here too, but it is, yeah. I know. I went to Boston Pizza. We got 2 pizzas and 2 drinks, medium pizzas, by the way, and it was $96. I was like, holy,
Boston Pizza's like the hot, the Rizzo, so it's like
yeah,
high-end.
it's insane. But you got to remember, like, we also have the conversion. So, to put it in perspective, because I hear this a lot, like people try to convince me how great Canada is. And I'm like, it is a great country. I love Canada. I love, like, it's beautiful when you're there, right? It's got beautiful countryside. The people are awesome. but the cost is absolutely insane. And so what I try to explain to people is that your taxes are higher, you make less money yearly for the same job, right? Like look at Air Canada going on strike. The average pilot there was like making $75,000 a year. That pilots, not what do they call them, the second officers, like actual pilots that had, I can't remember what they said, like with 10 plus years of experience, the equivalent here was 300,000, right? And I was like, okay, so if you look at like job to job, for example, say I worked at Walmart there, how much would I make per hour there, do you think, roughly?
I would say it would be maybe max $17.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here you're going to start at 15 and be about 17. Now here's where the difference is, because I had looked at, when I went to the shoe swap, I fell in love, right? Because my friends were there and I was like, oh, this, like I missed it. And then I started thinking like, oh, maybe I'll move back there in 2 years when little man moves out. So I started doing the math. So I was like, if I transfer from here to there with the same company, same job, and they kept me whole, so if I was able to make the same amount of money to the dollar, okay? So if my base pay stayed the same, which it wouldn't, but let's say it did, okay? And I went there, I would still make 33% less because your dollar is like worth 64 cents or 67 cents on the dollar. So right away, I'm already giving 33 cents off. Then with the inflation and the cost of housing, so my house here would probably cost somewhere in the range, depending on where I lived, probably 1.5 to 2.5 million dollars there, okay? Which people that are listening to this that live in the US are probably like, oh man, your house has got to be worth a lot here. Nah, it's not even, like I'm telling you, for what you can buy there, like Vancouver for 4.5 million would be like $150,000 to $250,000 house here. Now, like your cities like Chicago would be a little bit more expensive, but my first house in Chicago I spent $250,000 on, and that was about 3,500 square feet. If I did that in Vancouver, yeah, it would be like 4 million.
Well, here you're looking at 500 at least, like minimum for what we just bought our place.
Mm.
I'm hoping to rent, like in 5 years, like if I can, like get out, save all like I said, the rent that I could get in our place now for a 3 bedroom, probably 2,800
Yeah.
a month. Not that I would want to gouge anybody.
No,
That
but
would be the average.
yeah.
Like, because even when I was trying to look for rent, and this is why we bought, is because the rent was getting so high. So they had, and there's no control and like no control over it. There's no cap on anything. There's no regulations on whatever. These landlords and property managers just do whatever they wish, and that's unfortunate because our minimum wage is so low. People already can't even move out. Like I was considering moving back home. I'm like, God, I cannot do that. Like I can't move back with my mother. Like that's awful. But at the same time, I cannot stay in rent. Like, and a lot of people don't have that option.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate thing. Like if you were to move here, and then plus cost of food, and if you have kids, like my kids are fortunate. Like I'm fortunate that we're able to, like we're not high maintenance.
Yeah.
Like we're not a high maintenance family. Everyone's pretty chill and does their thing. But if you have your kids like in 5 different sports and you're traveling all the time, say for instance you're in hockey, like that you need like a dual health income for sure.
Yeah.
And even then, that's probably still struggling.
Yeah, it's hard there right now. Unless you bought your house 10 years ago, right? Which I think it's going to go that way here too at some point. I don't think it'll get as bad as there because it was expensive when I left there 23 years ago. And I don't know why I don't, but again, it is a beautiful country and I did, like my friends all live there. I have friends here too, but a lot of people won't come visit me because they're scared. Like they're absolutely scared. That's pretty common. It's common. Like people be like, "You live in like by Chicago?" Yeah.
I know when you're telling me all things, I don't know.
Yeah, no, beautiful city. Like Home Alone was taped there. Come on.
But it's just like obviously, kind of like
Oh yeah, no, a lot of stuff happens in Chicago. Minneapolis was the same way. I lived there, but it was a beautiful city as well. Um, Again, like I can't speak for everybody that commits a crime or has had a crime committed to them. Bad things happen to good people for sure. And I've had my car stolen, so I get it, right? Things do happen, no question. But to be fair, when I lived in Canada, the house that we lived in Dawson Creek was robbed 7 different times over almost 20 years. So, you know, yeah, yeah,
It's not. Yeah, my car. Yeah, we just had our new car. They didn't take anything, which was nice,
car hopping,
but they
where they just going car to car, yeah.
yeah, they're just going to whatever. Like I had nothing in it. I had just bought it, but still, like his old piece car seat was back there. Like we did have some expensive stuff in there, but they didn't take it. Thank God. Yeah, no one's like, oh, your door's open. I'm like, I forgot to lock my door, and I'm so forgetful. Like I always forget to lock my door. Like my door, the apartment always forget to lock the apartment. But if I, to me, if I ever did that in the States because I watch way too much true crime, it's like, oh yeah, someone's coming at me. Like I'm petrified and I'm still on the third floor because I think someone will call up to my balcony.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna happen. But
Lexi's like that, by the way, too. Lexi's like, "Oh, I would never live on the first floor, and I wouldn't." Here, I still live by this belief. I think always look for good intent in people, no matter what they look like, right? Um, a lot of people, because when I was a kid, I used to wear baggy clothes. I had my hair dyed, I had my earrings in, all that stuff, right? So people would just be like, ugh. What I find is just so many people, when you treat them with respect, they'll do the same. They're like, people aren't just out looking to hurt people. There are people out there that do that, but again, I've never felt unsafe. I've been in situations where I've seen unsafe things happen. And a lot of times it's prompted by one person or another person. Road rage is a great example. Like I do not, whether I'm in Canada or the US, I don't engage in road rage at all. If somebody cuts me off, if I need to say something, I will literally turn where they can't see me and I'll curse because I'm not going to engage in that, right? Because I control me, I don't control other people. Now, if it's time that I need to stand my ground, then I'll stand my ground. But again, it just doesn't happen very often. Like people here are very genuine. I'll tell you, when I moved to Oklahoma, people came to our door offering us pie and stuff. Like knock, knock, knock. Like welcome to the neighborhood. I cooked you a pie, or welcome to the neighborhood. Here's a meatloaf. Like that.
or you're like neighbor after. No,
No, it was when Mary. It was crazy because when we got there, I was like, this is not real. This is not real right now.
crazy.
It was awesome. It was like, oh my gosh. But before we went there, everything I'd see on YouTube and Google and all that stuff is like, you had to worry about the gangs. And when you weren't worried about the gangs, the tornadoes came through and killed you. And when you weren't worried about tornadoes, there were scorpions, snakes, and spiders. Like there were all this stuff that I researched, and it was always the negative stuff. Like, so when I moved there for work, I was like, what am I going to die from first? I was terrified of tornadoes. I was terrified of getting shot. I was terrified. I was like, this is a really bad city. It took me all of about 2 weeks and meeting just a few people, and I was like, holy smokes! Like these people, one, are really nice. Like there's just they like that southern charm, very inviting, like almost fake. Like I thought it was fake for probably the first 3 months. I was like, people are not this nice. They are. Um, I never saw any deadly snakes. They live there. I never saw a scorpion. I did see a black widow, but you can get black widows here too. Yeah, yeah. Um, you know, I never saw a shooting happen. I was there for the Moore tornado, like the 2013, the big F5, but it didn't come close to us. Before I went there, though, I believe that they chased you, right? Like tornadoes chased you. Like all of the stuff I would see on, like, back then YouTube was in its infancy, but that's all you could find was all the negative stuff. So I was like I'm gonna die if I go there.
That is so me right now. Like
Yeah,
there's no way to tell me about movie pictures and stuff. That's insane. That like, what?
greatest 2 years of my life was living in Oklahoma City. I learned so much about tornadoes, by the way. Um, no, like it went from being a fear to just a fascination of like how smart they are weather-wise, like the people in general. Like you gotta remember the F5 went through and I think what was it, 13 people died, which is sad that 13 people died, but for the amount of destruction that thing did, like people are pretty smart. They're prepared. It's a way of life. It's like a blizzard in Canada. If I was to take everybody in Oklahoma City and put them in Canada for a blizzard and they've never been through one, it would probably be a little bit different than you going through one because you know what to wear, you know when to go out, you know, like negative 50 is a real thing. You got to factor in wind chill. That's probably more dangerous than a tornado outbreak.
Well, I had a couple when Chicago was what, like 9 to 10 when nearly the city shut down. Like, are you freaking kidding me right now?
Yeah.
This whole thing.
You know what that is, though, to be honest with you, like with cities like Chicago, and as you get further south, like Atlanta, Oklahoma City, all of those places, like if they ever do get hit with like an ice storm is what they're called because it just glazes, it's like black ice everywhere. They literally don't have the snow plows to take care of it. So like in Canada, Minneapolis was the same way. Minneapolis had like 305 snow plows when I first moved there because like I used to deal with MnDOT, so that's Minnesota DOT, Department of Transportation. And so we used to do these little devices for them. Back then we called them machine to machine, but they're Internet of Things now, IoT. And it would track everything they were doing. So we had to do 305 of them. So they were ready to go. Whereas like Oklahoma City had like 15. So it would take them forever, right? Chicago's a little bit better, but they get that lake effect. And yeah, it's not like living in Edmonton. Like Edmonton, you get 4 feet of snow, you're going to work. Yeah. Yeah. No, that would never happen here. 4 feet of snow, I'd probably be off all week. You know what I mean? And I know that's an exaggeration, but like,
That was us last winter. We had my little VRBO, and there was already someone stuck.
yeah.
Like, the first one in front of us, like, like, so just call it in call it first. Yeah.
But I mean,
Wow. It's a cry.
well, living in Dawson because it was northern British Columbia, we would have been shut down 6 months out of the year if we didn't like. But the snowplows were so good, and like you know what I mean. We just knew that's how we survived. But that's how Oklahoma City is with the tornadoes. Like it's just another day. Now, can it be destructive? Absolutely. It can be scary for sure, but it's not like if you move there or you visit there, like it's really a beautiful city. And again, I've never felt unsafe. So, you know, is there unsafe areas to go? Absolutely. But I think there is everywhere, even in Edmonton. Like there's places you probably don't want to hang out at night, whatever. But I genuinely feel like most people are very kind and caring. And if you approach them that way, then, you know what I mean? There's just that select few that are not. And that's always a small percentage of people. And you don't know which ones. So it could be for different reasons, could be, you know what I mean? So, but no, I have a lot of people that will not visit me because they're afraid to come to the US, and then I'll see them go to like Costa Rica or Brazil and I'm like, but you're not scared to go there. Stuff like that happens there too. Not saying don't visit, because I bet you could go anywhere in the world and there's nice places to visit, but you just can't let the fear get to you because people genuinely aren't, like if everybody was as mean as they say, everybody would be dead. I mean, think about it. Like, you know, so the news just plays a major factor in that. And like I said, I watch some CBC and CTV. I've been watching more Canadian stuff lately just to shut out the US stuff. And I do watch some of that, and I'm like, and some of it's pretty accurate, but some of it I'm like, I wouldn't visit the US if I was watching this right now.
No, exactly.
But you know, like we do a lot of politics here, but there's never something on TV that tells me I shouldn't go visit Canada from here. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's, yeah, ours is nothing good. Nothing good.
It's crazy. So, what else you got? Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
No, I'm good for now. You know, bad really keep up. Yeah.
Yeah,
In my room, that's okay. It's Friday.
it is.
And it's actually getting way better sleeping in, which I lost from sleep like over 5 in the morning.
Well, we'll look at what our next topic will be, but I'll get this posted in a couple of days. I'll send it to you first, and then we can figure out. But we appreciate everybody joining. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to continue to look at different topics. Dallas had some great ideas. All her ideas, by the way. So we'll give you credit where credit's due, because there's some really good topics coming up. But the kind of like yin and yang of the US versus Canada is kind of a great thing, because we can look at different perspectives and ask different questions. So if you're listening in to us, if you've got questions, or if you have a different perspective or want to fact check, absolutely, put that down in the comments. Or if there's a topic you want to see from us, let us know. So I'm going to turn it over to Dallas to take us out, and we hope to see you back soon. Over to you.
I just want to thank you guys so much for joining us, and I'm glad to be back. Honestly, it's been a while, so happy to be back for this video. Thanks for this week. Yes. Doing this a little bit better. So we'll see you next week.
Perfect.